Hey folks, welcome to eCommerce 360. Today we have Cassidy, Retention Strategy Manager at Common Thread Collective and eCommerce Growth Agency. Hey Cassidy, welcome to the show.
Hello, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So Cassidy, before we jump into the topic of the episode for today, which is customer retention in e-commerce, why don't we kick it off by, knowing a bit about yourself and about Common Thread Collective?
Yeah, absolutely. Common Thread Collective is an agency focused on companies that are kind of in that growth phase of their business in that $2 to $30 million range, where you might have a brand that started off at someone's kitchen table and is just starting to grow beyond that. You might have a brand that's kind of gotten through a first few successful years and is now trying to figure out how to scale from there. And we are experts in that D2C space at growing and scaling and making sure that, things are being put in place not only for the short-term success of a business, but for that long-term growth. And that's something that, it's having a startup is hard. Having a business take off from the ground is hard, but then knowing where to go from there is even harder. And that's really where we excel. Personally, I've been in the email space for, I want to say 8 years now. And I've done that at several agencies. I've been on the production side, I've been on the strategy side, and now I am managing our team of retention strategists who are the ones really working with clients on, how can we innovate? What automations can we set up? How can we really move the needle and drive a program forward, which has just been such a fun space, especially with so many changes in the industry right now to kind of navigate and help brands through it.
So there are two interesting things that you talked about, which were very interesting. One is you help companies grow in a long term because they have scale to say some 3x, and how do they go from that to probably say 10x and 20x? One is that. And of course, you talked about innovation in the retention space, which is very exciting for us because in this episode, we're going to talk about retention. So before we jump onto it, we just want to make clear that nobody's disputing that acquisition is not important. Of course, acquisition is very important, but why is there a sudden rise in awareness, education, and conversations around retention and e-commerce specifically of late?
Yeah, I think this is demonstrated by kind of the classic scenario that a lot of clients come to us with, which is that they've been in business for a few years. They have the same email list that they started out with. They've been growing it. They've had new contacts coming in. But now that they've been in business a few years, a lot of the times they haven't started suppressing anybody yet. They're still mailing to everyone who's ever signed up with them. And they're starting to see performance drop, and they don't know why. And, we come in and we immediately start having that conversation around, okay, what are we going to do to make sure that your current list is being nurtured, that people who have lapsed are being offboarded in a way that kind of supports that journey and doesn't just bombard them with content that they're clearly not getting value from. And then, as much as I am a fan of retention over acquisition, how are we acquiring leads that are qualified and are likely to stick around instead of just trying to get anybody and their mother to sign up for your email list? What are we doing to make sure that we're bringing in people who are going to have a meaningful long-term relationship with the brand?
That's great. So what you're saying is pre-qualify, pre-purchase, and then post-purchase. That's very interesting. So let's talk about the factors that are contributing towards retention, right? What are the elements that make for a good customer retention strategy, according to you?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it comes down to personalization. And I know that's not a totally groundbreaking answer, but I think that it can be done in ways that are groundbreaking and are different. I've seen a lot of brands kind of making a shift towards communications that feel a little more one-to-one, that feel a little more personal. And I absolutely love that. I mean, beautiful design is beautiful design, and I'm always going to get excited about it. But I've recently seen emails that I've received from brands after making a purchase or after visiting a store or whatever it is, where I'm like, did a person write this to me? I'm not 100% sure if this is automated or not. And I love when that happens, or when I get a text from a brand that could really pass for someone just texting you. I think that that's just so exciting. It's so different from what consumers have come to expect. And I think that it's that relationship building. A lot of people just forget to think of their consumers as someone that they have a two-way relationship with. They just want them to spend their money. And it's like, yeah, they'll do that, but they'll do that if we nurture them. They'll do that if we interact with them, if we provide value, if we're really focused on creating a great experience. That's what brings people back for more.
Absolutely. And you also mentioned both email, which is a traditional channel, and text, which is like an upcoming channel, which is, everywhere you look now, it's always about text and SMS marketing. Let's talk about email and SMS, how different these channels are when it comes to retention.
Yeah, they are really different. And I think the biggest pitfall for brands who are new to SMS is that they treat it exactly like email. I've had a lot of brands that I've kind of done audits with or looked at their program to give some advice. And the number one issue that I see is that their SMS calendar is just a copy of their email calendar with pared down text. And it's just basically a summary of the email. And it's very rare to have people on your text list who aren't also on your email list. So that's really repetitive content for them. And it's invasive. It's coming, how many people leave unread texts in their inbox? I know that I certainly do not. And so if a brand sends me a text, I'm going to read it. And if a brand sends me a text every day and none of those are providing value to my life, I'm going to unsubscribe very quickly, because it's an intimate space. Like when people give us access to their inbox, that is an act of trust. And it's something that we need to respect and make sure that we're kind of in exchange for that providing real value to them. So making sure that the SMS content is complementing what they're getting in email, but also that they're getting a little extra value from that they're not already getting just from being on the email list, whether that's earlier access to sales or product launches, reminders right before a sale is about to end, where in email they might not actually see it in time. You want to make sure that you're kind of utilizing that timely channel to provide value that someone couldn't get just from being on the email list.
That's fascinating. And from your experience with brands, you have worked with multiple brands till now. Do you have any unconventional hacks that boost kind of their ROI just by doing excellent retention strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorites is a brand called Drip Drop that we work with. Everyone should go check them out. They're really fun. But something that they do is they send SMS messages that are based on the time of day in a user's time zone. And what they do is they'll really tailor the content to that time of day. So they'll send something right around lunchtime and say, hey, time check. If you haven't had any water yet today, you're already dehydrated. And it's so timely. When it arrives, I start to think like, oh, shoot, have I had any water yet today? Half the time the answer is no, because I am terrible at hydrating. But, it's providing value in the moment. It's relevant to the time when I receive it. And it doesn't make me question, why am I receiving this? And why am I receiving it right now? Which I have to admit, I get texts from brands that make me question that sometimes.
So yeah, be fun, be relevant, and be timely. So as you might know that at ShippingChimp, we are very, very passionate about post-purchase communication, of course, and notifications, customizing the shipping notifications. So according to you, what do you think? How important is post-purchase communication for an e-commerce brand?
So important. I think one of the number one things I've seen in post-purchase communication is the difference it can make on return rates. And I don't just mean return purchasers, but I mean literal returns of orders. Because a lot of times when customers send a product back, it's not because the product is bad, it's because they couldn't figure out how to use it, how to integrate it into their routine. So I think there is such an opportunity for education right there after an order to talk about, you start with your customer service team and ask them, like, what are the most common reasons that someone is returning a product or that someone doesn't feel comfortable checking out in the first place? Put that information in your abandoned cart, put it in your post-purchase, put it in the places where someone who's on the fence about either buying the product in the first place or keeping it is going to be most likely to see that information. And I know one of the brands we work with, I might have given this example before, but they sell leggings that when they arrive are really tight and they might feel like they're too small, but after a wear or two, they stretch out a little bit and really sculpt to your shape. And then it's like having a custom pair of pants. So people didn't know that. And they kept trying them on and then returning them immediately, saying that they were too small. So they updated their post-purchase with just a quick note that, hey, if you've purchased this particular product, and I think it showed dynamically only if that particular product had been purchased, these might show up a little small. Give them a couple wears before you decide to return them, because they're going to end up perfectly fitted to you. And their return rates went down by a ton. And because we haven't gone through the inconvenience of a return, that makes them more likely to be a repeat purchaser, because now they know exactly how this product works. They know what to expect. They know the brand is looking out for them in their experience. So little tiny things like that that feel so small on the brand side can make a massive difference to the customer.
So that's a hack right there. Go to your
Yeah.
customer service team, know what they're bombarded with, and then put them in your abandonment cart, put them in your post-purchase emails, educate your customers so that you bring down the return rates. That's amazing. So moving on to measuring the rates, your metrics. What metrics do you think are important for, especially for retention strategies, if they're working or not for a brand?
Yeah, I think that I'm going to start with what doesn't work. I think a lot of brands get kind of caught up in vanity metrics. I think open rates are a key example of this. They tell us a little bit. They tell us if we're sending at the right time and if we are using subject lines that work. But if people are opening your emails and never clicking or never converting, is that really success? If you have a stellar open rate, but no one goes further into the pipeline than that, you're not getting value out of your program. So I think that there are things that we tend to get caught up in that actually don't make that much of an impact. And I have to admit, I'm a little bit excited about iOS 15 because I think it's going to really force brands to think a little bit further into the user journey and not just say, okay, we're successful because our open rates are great, but to really think like, okay, starting from the subject line, from the send time, are people converting? And a lot of times we don't even tie those things together. So I think that click-throughs are important, conversions are important, active on site is important. I think that moving away from those metrics that show some engagement but don't actually provide value to the brand is going to be kind of an interesting move. And it's something that we've already been dealing with in SMS. We've never had open rates there, and we measure engagement just fine. We know when people are clicking through, we know when they're converting. We tend to see really strong value from that channel. So I think that there are learnings we can take from there to think a little bit more about, okay, the content that I'm sending, is it causing people to take the action I want them to take? And the action you want people to take is never just to open your email. It's to go to your site. It's to look at the product. It's to purchase a product. It's to engage with the brand in a deeper way. So I'm really excited to see that shift happen.
I think you're one of the few people who are excited about the iOS.
I'm not going to pretend that there wasn't any panic
I think
involved.
the whole e-commerce world or the entire ecosystem is too worried about it, but you're one of the few people who's very cheerful about it and who are very excited about the fact that this happened, and the shift toward personalization is exciting, obviously, for you. So let's talk about as a wrap up, what are the upcoming trends in customer retention, specifically because customer retention in itself is kind of a trend that's on the rise. And what do you think? Are there going to be new channels? Are there going to be more personalization, automation, or a combination of both? And probably, the impact of AI. How is it going to tie into the retention strategy? Let us know what your thoughts are on the trends that we are going to see in 2022, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the really big things we're going to see, and this does also tie back to some of those iOS changes and general kind of privacy guidelines that are evolving across the board and have been for years. We're seeing a lot of shifting away from third-party data, which I think is an opportunity again. And same thing with iOS 15. I'm not going to pretend there was never a panic involved. I'm not going to pretend it's all going to be super easy to navigate. It's not. It's a big change, but it's this big opportunity for brands that have never put a focus on first-party data to do that. And we're seeing a lot of that already. These aren't brand new technologies, but a lot of brands have never had reason to use them. Things like product quizzes, where you give your email in exchange for a detailed walkthrough what might be the perfect product for you. And we're collecting data all along the way that people are willingly giving us because we're providing value in exchange for it. And I think we've seen a lot more adoption of those kinds of things that have already existed recently. And I think we're going to continue to see that as brands realize that the best place to get information about a user is straight from the user. And I'm also, you mentioned AI, I'm super excited about more integrations there. I had a really interesting call recently. I'll plug one of our vendors, Tone Messaging. They are doing SMS and kind of a bridged AI and human communication way, where an AI starts the process of responding to a customer, and then a person signs off just to make sure the message is flawlessly relevant, that it is actually answering the question. So it kind of avoids some of those issues that old conversation trees have had, where someone might respond and the AI might give them back an answer that's almost relevant or relevant to one particular keyword in their response, but doesn't really answer the question. And I think that bridging of that human communication with that AI assistance to make it more scalable and more efficient is really exciting. I haven't seen a ton of applications of that in email. I know it can be done, and I know that there are a lot of technologies kind of working in that direction. And I'm also just excited to see greater integration between channels. I think that Klaviyo certainly took a step in that direction when they launched SMS in platform alongside email. It is so much easier to put email and SMS in a single flow than it is to try to get the timing right across multiple vendors. So I'm really excited to continue to see those integrations come out, to see that data passed back and forth across platforms, because ultimately the more data we have in one place, the more tailored we can be in our communication.
Absolutely. So just to summarize, permission marketing, AI integrated with human, and of course, integration of email, SMS, and all data so that you can measure all the metrics in one place. That's the trend that you predict. Thank you so much, Cassidy, for coming in today and giving us a load of insights with relevant examples. That's what makes it very interesting. Thank you so much for coming in. I'm sure our viewers are going to be taking away a lot of data and insights from our conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Great to be here.